it is what's missing is as you were asking earlier, how could the Ummah, the community of 1 billion Islamics, unite when there's basically what I'm going to write about in Hope Prophecy Bulletins in the near future is a cycle that happens, it seems, in Western religions that about the time when Christianity was as old as Islam is today, that is when they had their great schismatic religious civil war, the 30 Years' War. And that what we're about to see, or we're already engaged in, is Islam's evolution in the same timeline of the life cycle of a religion, is their version of the 30 Years' War. The last one was fought between Protestants and Catholics in Central Europe. It killed half the population of Central Europe over 30 years, one of the most devastating periods of warfare in history, and that Islam is now threatened with a similar problem, as it's beset, and one might say rightfully so, the way Muhammad is expressing it in his famous prophecy from the Hadith. In that prophecy, by the way, he said that there would come a time when the multitudes of believers. Remember, this is in 7th century when he's making this conversation, when there were only a few thousand followers. And he said, when they're as numerous as the foam in the sea, which, if you're living in a world that hasn't seen more than 300-400 million people tops in the entire planet, the concept of 1 billion adherents would be as if, metaphorically, the foam on the sea. But he talked about how at that time they would have tremendous wealth, but it would be denied them by Western Crusader usurpers, and that they would also be too attached to life and fear martyrdom and death, and that the community of Islamics would even help the Westerners, the Crusaders, and when they did this, they would not be given credit for it. And he talks about how they would be taken, a delegation would be taken to a place of forests and snow-capped mountains, and the leaders of the Christian leaders would then deny their part in accomplishing some great war, and then they would be colonized. And it sounds to me like he's describing the delegations of Arab leaders who fought with Lawrence of Arabia with the idea that by overthrowing the Ottoman Empire they would achieve independence and the sheikdoms could then unite. Well, what of course happened is that they achieved colonialism. In fact, the creation of Iraq, the creation that Winston Churchill said was his greatest mistake in his career, came out of the Versailles Treaty, and describing the Alps, describing Europe, where the leaders of the Islamic Ummah went and were basically shined on and turned into colonial subjects. These signs of the issue, I'm not trying to defend the barbarism of another side, but it has always been my contention from just studying prophecy and studying the nature of why it keeps repeating itself and why we don't seem to learn from our foreseen future histories, is that we've seen both sides seem to forever misjudge or project their judgment and ignorance on the other side. I mean, Hannibal was one of the great conquerors of past military history, always learned about his enemy before he fought them. If he was fighting a new Roman general in the Punic Wars, he got his spies to find out everything about their strengths and weaknesses. Because if you're going to fight in a war with someone who you perceive as your enemy, if you are disparaging them, if you disrespect your enemy, again and again, you will be setting yourself up to lose. And the level in which the commander-in-chief of the current administration has misjudged and ignored this lesson is showing its historic fruits again. The situation is that Muhammad saw in this prophecy that at a certain time, a third of the community of believers would follow the West and lose their souls. A third would be killed by the West. the Western Christian collision in this new jihad, and a third would actually be martyrs, that is, and they would go directly to heaven. A third would succeed in achieving the caliphate, and a third would be lost to sin and hell by serving the Crusaders. You know, the whole concept of both sides of these extreme Islamic views, the Shias of Muqtada al-Sadr and the Wahhabis who populate Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden's group, both look at their enemy with the same label, Crusaders.